name is V, and today let's talk about how fast we are moving. Um, how fast are you moving right now? That seems like an easy question. The first tempting question answer is I'm not moving. Upon further reflection, you realize that maybe the Earth's motion counts. So a second tempting answer is 90 miles per second around the sun. But when you recall learning that the sun moves around the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and the Milky Way moves within the local group of galaxies, and the local group moves within the Virgo cluster, and the Virgo cluster moves within blah blah blah. How fast are you moving is not an easy question. When mission control tells astronauts how fast they are going, there's always an assumed standard of rest. At the start of the voyage, speeds are given relative to the launch pad. But later, when the launch pad is just one more arbitrary face down there on Earth's spinning surface, the speeds are given relative to the idealized non-spinning pinpoint center of the Earth. The idealized non-spinning pinpoint center of the Earth. On their way to the moon, Apollo astronauts had a hard time answering the question, how fast are you moving? Speeding away from the Earth was one thing, and speed toward the moon was quite another. It's because the Earth and the moon more move relative to one another. Quote, speeding is a relative quantity. When Captain Kirk asked Lieutenant Sulu if the Starship Enterprise was reached a speed of Warp 7, Sulu should reply, relative to what, Captain? Such a sassy reply may get subordinate Starfleet officers in trouble. But is uh, it is the only good answer to the question, how fast are you moving? This is basically relative talking, not fancy Einsteinian relativity, but good old-fashioned and still correct Galilean gravity, Galilean relativity. Galileo seems to have been the first person to realize that there's no such thing as an absolute speed. Speeds are relative. This means that speeds only have meaning when they are referred to a reference frame. Uh, Presumably, that reference frame is itself as rest. But then we have to ask again. Uh, at rest relative to what? Because even the concept of rest has lost any hint of absolute meaning. Speed is relative and rest is relative. Earth speed is 90 miles second relative to the sun. The Enterprise speed is the warp 7. Relative to the center of the Milky Way galaxy, your speed is zero relative to your easy chair, but depending on where you sit, it is hundreds of miles out per hour relative to Earth's center. When we furrow and bro and ask, but how fast is Earth really moving? We imagine spaceship Earth flowing through the ocean of space, but as it orbits the sun. mm as it orbits the sun. But space is not an ocean. It has no substance as water does. A space is not a thing, space is nothing, space is nothing. You have moved between 2 points in space, say between Earth and Mars, but you can't move through space. There's nothing to move through. It's like trying to say how much a hole weighs. A hole weighs exactly nothing because a hole is nothing. It's a void, and so is space. To move relative to nothing is meaningless. The concepts of speed and rest have only relative meaning. They are absolute meaningless. They mean something only with respect to arbitrarily chosen artificial frames of reference. If someday you are buckled into your spaceship and you're seen from the side window says a space station whizzed by the constant speed, there is no way you know which of you is really moving. Neither of you is really moving because there is no deep reality about constant speed. Constant speed is in a straight line, has only relative meaning, a kind of relative reality. Does it mean that all motion is relative? No, some motion have only relative meaning, but some motion have absolute meaning, are absolute real. For example, constant speed is relative, but change in speed is absolute blah blah. Calling something absolute in science means that arbitrary standards are not used in its measurements. It is blah blah hard word measurable when your spaceship files is engine just your change in speed is beyond doubt. You feel it in your stomach and your ship sensor can measure. Outside your window, the passing space station may seem to be changing speed, but they being inside the station will not feel it. And no sensor can measure it. You are really changing speed and they are not um and they're really not. There's something absolutely real about changing in speed. The same go for rotation. If your spaceship is spinning, you can feel. And if your ship sensor can measure it, the space station outside may seem to be going around you, but it is you who feels queasy, not the folks in the space station. You're really spinning, and they're really not. Um, there's something absolute real about rotation. So some motions are relative and some are not. There is no deep reality about constant speed, um, but changes in speed are deeply real. And so are rotation. We have thoughtful and our analysis of um, everyday experience in order to identify what is deeply real, since we can move forward by perception as basic as speed. Maybe every perception deserves careful scrutiny. This is what is by Einstein. Uh, and then um, and then blah blah blah. It, at last, if a police asks you, um, pulls you over for speeding and asks, "Do you know how fast you were going?" In insightful thought, perhaps unwise reply would be relative to what, and then you sit in the backseat of the police car and feel it accelerate toward jail. You can add, but something absolute. Thank you for listening.